So, Aconcagua, the highest peak in South America, the highest peak in the Americas, and actually the highest mountain in outside the Himalayas, so outside of Asia. So it brings a lot of challenges, and of course adventure that's associated with climbing this mountain. Probably one of my favorite mountains. I first did it back in the '90s, and just built an affinity toward guiding it from here on out. And I would say it's a mountain that people hire me privately more than any other mountain to climb it, just because of the increase in the percentage of safety, and even just the chances of summiting too. And I'll go through that in this video, but there's so much preparation that goes on into a Aconcagua expedition. So there's the obvious, the physical fitness, and that's a huge part of it, of course. And I would say a baseline. There's an importance to being in excellent physical condition, and that's where I actually created many years ago the mountain climbing adventure 5-month training protocol. It was really for Aconcagua in mind, and of course I've used it for different trips that we offer. But endurance, strength, and the ability to work with the extreme altitude. But even more important is the mental preparation. People don't realize, they look at the numbers and they say, oh, it's just 4,000 more feet higher than Kilimanjaro, and I did really well on Kilimanjaro. But that's where the importance comes in, dealing with the isolation, dealing with the extreme altitude, and dealing with the incredible weather that potentially arises on Aconcagua. So the route selection becomes very important. What's associated with the difficulty levels in the different routes. There's 4 different routes you can take, 4 different base camps, and the challenges that come with those, and the advantages and disadvantages. They're clear on that, and I go deeper into that depending on the people in the group that potentially is going to be climbing with me. We take care of all the permits based on the regulations for that year, obtaining those permits, compliance with park regulations, the fees, and all of that. But one thing I tell people is the timing and the season. So not only do you need a tremendous amount of time during the expedition, it's typically anywhere from about 14 to 20 days. Yeah, and it's a long expedition, and the reason for that range is weather. You need to have weather days built in. You don't want to have to get back because your flight is leaving after 2 weeks and you're running out of time. So that puts a lot of stress on people. So allotting 3 weeks as a minimum for this trip is what's needed as a base. But the climbing season generally runs from I'd say end of November, it's very cold, to into March it's warmer. So obviously, South America, for the majority of people that do climb with us, it's opposite seasons. So as you're coming into November, December, and of course into the new year, January and onwards, it's getting into the summer months. So the glacier does change every year, and it does even change depending on the kind of season they had, the kind of winter they had. Even on the approaches into the base camp can be very different year to year. It's like that all the time. So being prepared for this trip comes into, I talked about the physical, I talked about the mental briefly, but the clothing, the layering for the varying conditions, the camping gear we tend to take care of. We have great tents, the best tents that we use on Aconcagua, even at base camp. We have the big semi-permanent campsites that we rent out that give you a lot of space, chairs, comfort, and so on, even though we're acclimatizing. But you have to prepare for the high altitude, and a lot of things are unique to Aconcagua than other trips that people might have done before. Things like crampons, they're actually absolutely necessary. Ice axe, potentially being roped in on certain parts, again, depending upon what we face. We don't know a lot of the times. And if we're early in the season, if we're going in especially beginning of December, we don't know, because then a lot of people have been up to the higher parts of the mountain. So these things like crampons and ice axes and being roped and potentially even helmets, they become a big part of the trip higher up. Double mountaineering boots, these are very important, and I'll talk a little bit about that in future videos for people that are interested. But the health and the safety is another factor that comes into play for Aconcagua. And it's really where cerebral and pulmonary edema start to show. You see it a lot more regular with people that are pushing themselves maybe a little too fast to acclimatize. So acclimatization strategies become really important. The emergency procedures, communication with base camp, communication with the medical services based in Mendoza. You know, a lot of people get helicoptered out of base camp, evacuation plans, first aid, basic medical knowledge, and the supplies that we have as a group, as a guide, recognizing how to treat common ailments, but even more important is how to detect the symptoms before they become serious. And this is where the mettle of a real true mountain guide comes into play. Oh, the daily routine. The daily routine on what's a typical day on the mountain is really about learning how to manage energy and how to pace in everything that you do. You know, from cooking, if you're partaking in some of the cooking jobs and camp maintenance. The winds on Aconcagua can get really bad. So, you know, if we're stuck at a certain camp for a few days because of inclement, tough weather, you know, we got to maintain the camp to protect us. So it's really about managing your energy and pacing on a daily basis. That's really what it becomes. And you really do find the first few days, you get into it. You get into it and you understand it. And the acclimatization process is generally really boring because, you know, you're spending 2 to 3 days at a time going between the same two campsites generally. But that's what's needed to create a base for your acclimatization so that you can eventually move up higher in the mountains. So summiting Aconcagua, that's where it gets really real. And this is where Aconcagua does really separate itself from some of the lesser mountains that people have climbed and they're endeavoring now to do something bigger. Is the summit day. Is the summit day because you're spending nights and you're sleeping above 20,000 feet. So depending on where we make our summit attempt, I've been lucky enough to do it from Camp 2. Camp 2 resides at about 19,000 feet. Camp 3, you know, resides around just over 20,000 feet. It's a big difference actually on where you're situated and how many hours it takes to do the summit day. So you're spending a lot of time, a lot more time than anybody's ever really been prepared for at the beginning of extreme altitude. So that's where Aconcagua, again, just really differentiates itself from the lesser mountains that people are coming from. And I can't encourage this do-it-yourself research and tapping into my resources of experience that have been on Aconcagua with a variety of different people and levels. And it really is a different ballpark. That's the one way I would describe Aconcagua. It's a different ballpark. Where, let's say, climbing the 8,000 meter peaks, that's including Mount Everest, might be the Olympics, okay? And then Kilimanjaro is sort of the entry and an age group category for your sport, let's say. Aconcagua resides at semi-pro level, you know, and if anybody understands high-level sports, that's a high level. And so is it doable for the people, for the majority of people? I'd say yes. However, I put some stipulations into that. Their physical and mental prep that I kind of just touched on earlier on in this video. And then their experience with altitude's a big part of it. You know, I have had a lot of people reach out to me that don't have any experience at high altitude and they just want to climb above 20,000 feet. And so Aconcagua is a great option for them. And so I deter people and I say, do something a little bit lesser in that situation. Do some age group sport. You know, get yourself involved with touching close to 20,000 feet. See how you respond. See how you like it. You know, some people really don't like the constant pressure of the altitude on them, and Aconcagua is going to present that to you. Is it a great way of learning about what you're capable of? 100%. That's what mountain climbing can do. You learn so much more about who you are and what you're capable of in mountain climbing. However, is this something you want to spend your time really doing? And so preparation starts in doing your research, and then how far that goes from there. So, like the video, comment on the video. I'd love to hear some questions and concerns that you may have. If you've climbed Aconcagua before, whether it was me or somebody else, share your experiences and what you found beautiful about it and what you found really difficult about it. Share it, or find out a little bit more by commenting on the video. I'd love to hear from you. But I'm looking forward to getting back in the mountain. I love this region of the world. I love it from the start zone where you fly into Mendoza. I think it's a fantastic city. I've been able to share it with my wife as well. And the mountain. I have so many stories. And I don't even want to get into that because there's so many crazy stories from my Aconcagua expeditions over the years, over my career. But hit me up. I'd love to hear from you guys. Bye for now.